Cloud.
Hello, welcome to our session, Reading to Connect Communities. I'm Julia Torres, and this is JoEllen McCarthy, and we are the Educator Collaborative Book Ambassadors.
Hi, welcome. Woohoo!
Thank you so much for joining us today. Time is one of the best gifts that you can give someone, and we're really grateful for you spending time with us today. We are going to kick things off by letting you know about two special projects that we worked on, just before, during, and they're available now during this pandemic time. One is called Layers of Learning, and I will let JoEllen talk a little bit about hers. And the other
Okay.
is Liven Up Your Library. So JoEllen, go ahead. You go first.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to do this session as always because I get the opportunity to work alongside Julia, and that just makes me happy. And I'm thrilled to be able to say that we at the Educator Collaborative all share many of the same goals, and we are very much champions for independent reading and putting the right books into the hands of readers. And so both of us and all of the colleagues that we are privileged to work with and the children that we serve have the opportunity to think about the importance of the power of books and stories. And so whether that's for your classroom library or for your school collection, thinking thoughtfully about curating a collection of texts. In my case, I focused a lot on using picture books because I believe that picture books are our co-teachers. And I believe that every book offers us an invitation to learn more about ourselves, others, and the world. And I'm really thrilled to be able to offer some suggestions that demonstrate really meaningful texts that have been tried and true, proven in the classroom, and with the help of the visible voice of kids, the ways in which we can lift the level of the conversations we're having around books.
And my title is called Liven Up Your Library, Design Engaging and Inclusive Programs for Tweens and Teens. It was co-authored with a fabulous librarian out of Texas. Her name is Valerie Tago. And so all I can really say is that Liven Up Your Library was meant to be a love letter to those who are serving as librarians or those who are and have been established librarians, so new librarians or folks who have been doing the work for a really long time. We talk about ways to engage young people, but also inclusivity in the field of librarianship. So if you're more curious about these, you can check out the Stenhouse website or the ISTE website for more information about our books. So here are some thoughts from the books that connect us. I said, Valerie and I said, if we want our library spaces to be truly welcoming, they must be culturally responsive and inclusive. And the reason that this is included is because I really wanted to, when I think about JoEllen's book, I think about the way that she includes so many titles that represent the lived realities of so many different people on this planet and in our country, which is the US. So if you're joining us internationally, just know that cultural responsiveness and inclusivity is something that we are both very committed to. And we pulled these two quotes because they kind of connect us, but also give you a little bit more of an idea about what's inside the books.
Thank
All
you.
right, JoEllen.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and people can read the quote. Like Julia, I think that's so important. And I know that in our work, as we have the opportunity and the privilege to work alongside teachers and students and learn from them, we're often asked about books, but it's beyond the books. It's not just about the books that we're using, but it's how we're using those books to be able to reach the hearts and minds of our kids. And we both also focus really our work around centering kids and centering care. And the books are the invitations for those caring conversations. So we invite these opportunities to learn from you and with you, and we hope that you'll stay connected with us about the ways in which you are using books to connect with your kids.
All right, so let's get going. We're going to start with a quote from a person that I know we both really respect and admire a lot. Michelle Obama has said, becoming is never giving up on the idea that there's more growing to be done. And that means us as educators, as well as young people. We are constantly asking young people to get outside their comfort zone, to push themselves, to get uncomfortable, to stretch and grow as learners. And sometimes we are more reluctant or hesitant to do that as adults. I love Michelle Obama's Becoming, especially the version adapted for young readers. It was definitely one of my favorite reads of last year, I think it was. But I just love the book so much. I was really lucky to be able to meet Mrs. Obama when she came to Denver. She was at our independent bookstore, the Tattered Cover, and that was definitely a highlight of some really kind of tumultuous times. Do you want to add
And
anything, JoEllen?
I do, because you didn't say it. And if people don't know, the adapted version for young readers has a fabulous discussion guide that was written by my wonderful friend, Julia. And so if you haven't had the opportunity to look at that version or to really reap the benefits of all that she put into that to help you alongside the conversations that that book invites and the work that Michelle Obama has done is really complemented by my fabulous and talented friend, Julia.
Thank you, JoEllen. I appreciate that. I put a lot of love into that guide. So I hope that it is helpful for individuals, for educators, for librarians, and for anyone working in communities. All right, so we are going to just talk a little bit about ways to think and talk beyond the books, through the books, into the books that we're going to share today. So we're going to give you a few tips and a few things that we have done that have been ways to unite our community.
Sorry, didn't realize that was on.
No
Oops,
worries.
live recording. I thought my sounds were off. I apologize.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we know that books matter. And as we said before, putting the right books in the hands of kids is so important. But we know also that the book belongs to the reader. And so if we choose well and we choose with intention and we think about researching our kids first and researching books second, we want to let the kids and the books lead those conversations. And I think it's super important as we are doing this work. Julia and I said before the recording that we could just talk books all day long, and we would love to do that. But we also want you to know that this work is grounded in what happens in the classroom with our students. And we really want to give kids the opportunity to use their voice and their response and their interpretation to be able to affirm their thoughts, challenge new ideas, and really just give us that opportunity to grow from the stories that we share and those authentic experiences.
And also thinking about authentic experiences, we want to design activities that provide for as much choice as possible. Often we think we're giving choice, but we are giving the choice of a novel, and then we're still assigning these really stiff assignments that go along with it. I think it's more common in the elementary grades to do really fun interactive stuff with books, but I hope that those who are teaching middle grade and high school will still continue to understand the importance of designing activities that provide choice, but that are also interactive and help build community. We're going to talk a lot today about ways to find joy in the titles that we share, or the ways that the titles that we share can help communities find joy, but then also how to help build connection, because that's really what all of us, I think, are looking for after so much time apart. Also, we want to emphasize community building over commodification. I know that it is really important, especially in the upper grades, to make sure that everything has a grade, or most things have a grade, because many students are programmed or have learned to only value something once it is given grades are the academic currency. So I don't want to say a monetary value, but some kind of currency value in the system of schooling. But one way that we can de-emphasize that is through helping young people build communities and learn to share stories around the books that they read together, but also the experiences that they have together. And hopefully lots of those will happen around building community.
Yeah, and the other thing, as you can see, and as we're thinking and talking about and beyond books, is that we really want to focus on the opportunity to use stories that really celebrate and give us opportunities to respect and learn and celebrate the differences among us, so that kids are learning to own the beauty and the brilliance of their own identities and experience the beauty and brilliance of others that may or may not match their own. And so when we use books to have those conversations and to get into the opportunity to think about that, that is what is most important of community building, right? Community starts with that affirmation of self and that self-love, and so that it extends and grows in the ways that we feel about ourselves and others.
And then, last but not least, we want to empower young people through giving opportunities for activism. Everybody doesn't need to be the change. However, everybody can be a part of the change. So the real question is, how can I find my part? So we want to help young people think about what their individual skills are and how they could be used to benefit other people through activism. So I think that sometimes that activism can look like informing the community about social issues. Sometimes that activism can look like building up one's self-confidence or helping to, cheer on a peer or a classmate. So empowering our peers through opportunities for activism is key. As we go into these texts, we will talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. And so I am thrilled because the first book that we wanted to talk about is a Frank Morrison book. And Frank Morrison is such a talented illustrator. And this book is so fabulous. And in his very incredibly identifiable artwork, which is just jumping off the page, this is a book, as Julia said, we want to focus on books to build community and celebrate who we are and to celebrate joy and joyful, pure joy read alouds. And this is at the top of the list. And this just came out, folks. And so what I love about this book is the message that it is loving oneself. And the main character in here does move into a new community, is trying to find his way. But the message is not about him fitting in with others. It's really being able to celebrate who he already is. And he has this amazing talent as a skateboarder, as you can tell. And he has a message again and again as he's thinking about connecting with other friends, that he's reminded of how special he is. And his dad calls him Epic and is always reminding him to epic to be you. And I just love the back of the text itself, to get to see the cover and the back cover and just the celebration of how we have to love ourselves, love oneself, and just celebrate who we are as individuals. And if you don't know Frank Morrison's work, and many of the authors we'll discuss today, that's one of the tips that we would also suggest, that you go into some investigations to look up some of the authors and illustrators that we do mention and are already in love with, because oftentimes that will lead you to a now and a next book. I know certainly as book ambassadors, that's one of the things that we do often and helps us. We're building our own collection.
Sorry, my dog is my background noise. So there's going to be the periodic interruption
Yeah,
from my dog. He is not really the best at understanding when it's a good time and when it's not.
I love it.
But let's go ahead and talk a little bit just about creating bonds, connecting hearts and minds, sharing stories and experiences that invite curiosity, and then inspiring writers, readers, and humans.
Yeah, absolutely. When Julia and I pick a book, and oftentimes, we're asked, of course, for lists and such, but we want teachers to think about being able to get into the habit of doing the investigation themselves and picking up any book to then analyze and think critically about, like, what is being shared, whose voice is being lifted, what are the messages that are being sent. And so, for example, in this text, like, we can pick up this book and we can see right away that Ivan, who's also known as Epic, is introduced. And so when we think about creating book bonds and talking through and beyond stories, we want to analyze what the writers have done that kids can then celebrate and do on their own. And so thinking about in their own writing, how are they then representing themselves and introducing themselves and highlighting all of the joyful parts of their own lives? And so when you think about creating a book bond, it's not just with the book, but it's with an author and the author's craft. So kids are then given that opportunity to think about, I could write like, or draw like, or create poetry like the stories and the authors that they admire. And I think that really is something that gives kids permission to then say, I have a vision for what's possible. And in falling in love with that work, I can then try to emulate it. So it's that inspiration, imitation, and opportunity for this wonderful way for kids to create because they've been inspired by something they've seen.
And we've had that experience too, right? I think that many times we will feel brave enough to talk about things that have had a tremendous impact on shaping who we are when somebody shares a story with us that shows an author doing the same thing. So this is a book called Big by Vashti Harrison. Should be out soon, I believe at the beginning of 2023. So definitely keep an eye out for this one. I was lucky enough to see an advanced copy, and I it's really, really, really beautiful. All I can say about it is don't shy away from exploring what might be considered sensitive topics. There are many people out there who can give guidance as to how to approach talking about sensitive topics. So I think it's important to seek out those people. If you have an idea, if you have a book that you want to share with young people, or if a young person wants to share a book with the class or with their family or with you, then invite that conversation. Don't shy away from it. Also, modeling discussion across differences is important rather than remaining quiet, remaining polite, and just not talking about the differences that are between us. Audre Lorde has said before, as we know, famously, it is not our differences that divide us, but our inability to appreciate, recognize, respect, and uplift those differences. So those are the things that we need to start cultivating, those skills that we need to start cultivating within ourselves, and then hopefully in the young people that we are working with as well. We want to commit to creating and maintaining emotionally safe spaces. I know that I make a purposeful choice every year to let students know I want this to feel like a safe space for you where you can share this, that, and the other. Young people will see you interacting with other young people. They will see how you respond and react to a book, and then your willingness to either bring it into community and share it with those outside the community or not. And those things will shape how they feel about sensitive topics. It will shape how they feel about themselves. It will shape how they feel about whether your environment or the environment that you have built for them is emotionally safe or not. JoEllen, I see that you have one that you want to share.
You know what I did? I forgot to put this picture in, so I wanted to share Lou by Brianna Carzu, because this book was written and illustrated by Brianna to speak about Lou, the fire hydrant. And so when you think about, we're doing this K-12, and so all of the things Julie just said, using a book to invite conversations, to create safe spaces. This is a book that's written on a much lower level scale, but you can have really complex conversations because of the way in which the author has taken this fire hydrant's narration and view of itself, thinking about how the fire hydrant is concerned in the ways in which he's defined by others, right? And so it's very humorous because he complains about all the ways people use him and the animals around, and it has kids laughing because it even talks about what dogs like to do on certain parts of Lou, and he doesn't really understand why people are viewing him this way, and he's not feeling so proud of himself and what he's able to do. And it isn't until there's a little bit of a fire in the neighborhood and he gets to be used for his wonderful self and his self-worth, and he starts to understand and recognize that he needs to love all of the parts of who he is. And so thinking about the messages that can be sent in a powerful picture book for young children to invite those conversations starting early on. And so I just wanted to remember to share that as you were talking about Big, likewise another book to have that conversation so that we're spanning all of the different grade levels as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think that all books are really, well, a lot of books are for all ages. I think that it's about how we present them to young people. And then if you are feeling uncomfortable, finding those supports to help make discussions about books that might cover sensitive topics a little bit more approachable for ourselves, but then also that confidence that we will get as we work with folks who are more accustomed to having difficult, what some people call them difficult conversations, but I don't like that. I would say just sensitive topics and then conversations that need a little bit more attentiveness and care and thoughtfulness. And your book, actually, JoEllen, really gives a lot of good advice for how to dive into talking about what she terms heart print, if I got it right, books, where you're going to touch the heart of somebody because you're getting at a very personal story or a story that touches on a personal aspect of their lived experience. The last bullet point here says inviting communities in and creating experiences for students to learn outside, which I really want to do more of as well. Inviting community members into our spaces is a great way to help young people know that the walls of the school are not the only place where they will learn. So making sure that we're inviting people from the community in and then bringing our students out into the community to do various projects and to connect in various ways with people in the community is another way to help them understand that learning isn't just something that you do at school. It's something that happens everywhere. And that's a way that our people who are elders, for example, in the community can find joy still in connecting with young people, and then young people can learn to value them. I know that this happens a lot in libraries, especially public libraries. And you should know, I think everybody does know by now, that libraries are disappearing across the country. So it's important to protect them as a resource. All right, here are a few books that JoEllen is going to buzz or talk about. And so I am just going to listen and take some notes and think about what I could do to include these in my classes. JoEllen, handing it over to you.
Well, thank you. I was thinking because I can never remember in what order our slides are, and I'm not sharing. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you just brought up the community piece, because I knew we had mentioned talking about the importance of using stories that celebrate community and the inside and outside spaces. And so this book is a little bit older, and it's an anthology collection, and there are actually several in this series, but this one is called On My Block, and it is all beautiful stories and paintings by 15 artists that celebrate places that are important to the individual creators in this story. And it really gives an opportunity to think through the places we come from and how that shapes who we are and in which ways we find and connect from our culture, the experiences that we have. It's a great opportunity to connect to writing because it can get kids to think about special places in their lives and memories and moments connected to those special places. But it also gives us an opportunity to have like a love letter to community and to our neighborhood and to learn about one another. And so if we are extending the conversation beyond the book, to ask our students to go outside and to think about those individuals in our community whom we connect with and who are important to us as well. And so, tying memories and moments to special places in the community is very uplifting for kids. And to see the array and the beautiful examples that exist. Just one example that I wanted to point out, because again, tying it not just to the book, but leading you to a now and next book, there's a piece in here by Maya Cristina Gonzalez, who's also the author of Call Me Tree and many beautiful picture books. And she talks about the importance of writing and finding space in writing and drawing. And I just love the language in here where she talks about how every time she would look at the sky, it would make her think about an empty page and her hands were ready to fly because each page felt like an open sky waiting for her to draw and to create. And I think that's such a beautiful invitation for kids. And so that's one book that we wanted to share and to celebrate. And when we think about community, and I'm so glad you mentioned the elders, because Dream Street, which was written by Trisha Elam Walker and Aqua Holmes, which, by the way, if people don't know, these two beautiful women are first cousins. And so there's a wonderful author's note in the back about how they wanted to gift the world with this book, Dream Street, and it really is such a beautiful gift because it's a celebration about people in their community who care for one another. And I say care for because I speak really often about the work of Geneva Gay, where she so eloquently differentiates the difference, explicitly explains the difference between caring about and caring for one another, and how caring for moves us to action. And so this book is really a true illustration of that in the art and the words of the people in the community and the advice that they offer on Dream Street. And it's just a beautiful story that celebrates the places we're from, the people that we connect to, and how the people in our community can nurture us and make anything seem possible. I love, love, love this book. And I absolutely love the author's note in the back, and just thinking about how we can find life lessons in all the people around us and the books and the stories that we are gifted with. So I love that one by these two lovely individuals. And then the last one on community, which does the same thing, is Show the World. And this book was written by Angela Dalton, and Daria Peoples is the illustrator. And it does the same thing, but it speaks directly to the reader and asks the reader to think about all of the ways in which they can share their gifts with the world, and invites that question: what will you do or say or make to express who you are? And so when we're thinking about uplifting texts to really celebrate and nurture community, we wanted to talk about those three individual texts as well.
I really love the cover of that last one, Joellen, just
For the
because so
world.
many of our kids, yeah, so many of our kids take pictures, even very young ones take pictures of everything that's important to them. And that's something that's changed, right, over the last few decades, is that the ability to just take pictures and have them right immediately. That's something that is really impressive. And to have a very young person, or just even that concept of photographing your world and your community and how you see your community from a really early age, is kind of a neat one, I think, to explore.
I
All right,
do
I'm gonna
agree.
go ahead and share these again, and we'll keep moving.
Oh,
We've
so, oh my gosh. So this one, you can definitely leave the image up because it's just such a powerful image. I love this book so much. My Hands Tell a Story by Kelly Starling Lyons. This is a new one that I've used a lot this new school year in launching reading and writing workshop, because it's a beautiful story that is one where we are celebrating love and family and self-love, and just the relationship between a child and someone in the family, in this case, the grandmother, who's so nurturing and loving and really special. And it really brings to mind, for me, it calls to mind work of like Eloise Greenfield. There's a beautiful book she has, Grandpa's Face, that's much older, where there's a strong relationship between a granddaughter and her grandfather, and they spend time together on talk walks. Well, these two individuals spend time telling stories in the kitchen, and the grandmother tells her and teaches her that your hands tell a story. And the young girl learns through the grandmother sharing those stories and those special moments that she has a variety of opportunities to make memories and to think about the stories her hands have told and will tell. And I have a picture on the next slide, if you want to show that one for us, if you don't mind. The wonderful example of how we've been using this book in the classroom. And if you know that I try to bring this framework of an anchor text for that heart print connection, discussion possibilities first and foremost, and then what are those extension activities outside of the book, right? And so it's just thinking through the ways that we can have kids connect and go deeper. So this is just such a beautiful example of kids getting to know each other, like the first few weeks of school, as they're tracing each other's hands, telling each other's stories, and really just becoming part of the classroom community through a powerful book that can spark that conversation. And I'm really in love with this one. This is one I'm just, I go everywhere. It's in my suitcase. My suitcase is on the floor behind me. You can't see, because this is essentially my classroom. And then when I'm not doing a virtual workshop, I get to go places. So it's got to go in my suitcase. So this is one that I actually have purchased this and gifted it to so many teachers that this is now a library copy that I have in here. And I will be getting another copy to keep.
I definitely need to get one of those. I just wrote it down. I love Kelly Starling Lyons, so I'm excited to read it.
Yeah. I'm writing down as you're talking and as I'm talking, so we can add to that because there's so many individual authors and illustrators who have a collection of amazing books
Yeah.
that we hope that you will do that after viewing this, or as you're collecting and thinking about mentor text to use in your classroom for this work for building community, and that collection will grow, right? Because there's just so many amazing books out there.
And definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. We have, I think, a button on the EdCollab website that allows you to just hit the button and then you can ask us a question. Or if you would like for either or both of us to come and visit you virtually or in person, that can also be arranged. All right, this one.
Yeah.
Look at this page. Go ahead.
It's so amazing. It's so beautiful, and no surprises here because it was created by Matt De La Pena and Karina Lukin, and their collaboration is just stunning. The artwork matches the beautiful text that Matt De La Pena gifts us with in this book, and it's really a wonderful opportunity to think about seeing all of the pieces who we are. And it starts off by recognizing how oftentimes people are, again, too quick to make decisions or to make assumptions about people. So he starts off in talking with the way in which a child is marked and viewed before even being born, or just being placed into a box. For example, talking about gender norms, or reflecting a little bit on some of society's decisions about if you do a certain thing or play a certain way and or act a certain way in the classroom, you're quickly labeled something, and recognizing how all of these beautiful pieces make up who we are. And my favorite line in the book is how when you cry, and I wrote it down in our notes, but I'm not looking at the notes page right now, I apologize, but it's that tears don't make us weak. They're not pink or blue, they don't make us weak. Tears just make us human. And it's just filled with simple text and beautiful language like that speaks to so many powerful, or invites so many powerful conversations to nurture and support your community. I hope you'll check it out.
Especially right now when I think that, many of us are still grieving and we are still kind of going through, I don't even want to call it a recovery period because the pandemic appears to be ongoing. So we are sort of like trying to adapt to this new reality that we find ourselves in and still find ways to connect with one another, but also be real about the loss, the sadness, the grief that we feel. And so talking about it through these works and also making space for it and not ignoring it. I think that is a service that educators and librarians can do for young people that doesn't happen in a lot of other spaces, or might not happen in other spaces.
Yeah. I just wanted to add this to a collection, to our collection today, because when we think about authors and the influence of their work, Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, who you may know is the author of Your Name is a Song, such a powerful picture book, she's gifted us with the whole read aloud of this text. And it's a book that really recognizes that learning is messy and that we want our kids to know that that's okay. And so the author's note and the illustrator's note in there, Tiffany Rose, I just think are so beautiful, thinking about how we can inspire kids to see the beauty in the work that they do, and that everything doesn't have to be perfect. So we wanted to include that as well. And you can check out the Read Aloud by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, Compliments of Simon Kids.
Yes, and it's free and it's available on YouTube. Oh, I don't think that we were going to read aloud. Not right now. How are we doing on time, JoEllen?
We're good. We're good. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay, I am going to move us along then, simply because
go right ahead.
We do have the middle grade next, and I'm going to be very quick with these. I think that some of the joy that I found in these texts is that they talk about reality and what it might be like to live or live with somebody who is living through a mental illness, as you do with Moonflower. Moonflower is such a beautiful, creative way of talking about mental illness, or even just talking about just even not mental illness in general, but depression specifically, which many of us have felt either temporarily or permanently. So Moonflower is creative. It's fantastic. It is just a beautiful way of dealing with a fact of human life, or an aspect of humanity that we many of us deal with, but that isn't often discussed. And so I think there can be joy and community found in talking about what is not always talked about, or what is often deliberately not talked about. That's what I mean to say. Key Player is super exciting because if you live in a community that loves football or soccer as much as my communities do, then you're going to have a lot of people around you who like to talk about soccer and who like to play soccer. So Key Player is kind of cool because it brings in all of the greatness of the other front desk novels, but has a very clear community, team building, sports theme behind it. Maya and the Robot, I think, is important for all of our STEM loving young people, specifically young Black girls that might be involved in the sciences. So I think that that is a way also to involve folks who are often pushed to the margins when it comes to emphasizing literacy and language arts class. If your strength just happens to be science and mathematics, then you might not feel as strong necessarily in language arts class. So this book is one that can draw young people in, and I'm imagining robot building contests. I'm imagining people drawing robots. I'm imagining some kind of community event where people get together and read the book together, and then also talk about their experiences with STEM and their experiences growing up in, robotics is kind of a big thing in library spaces now too, because of all the maker spaces that are around. The Reluctant Storyteller, I think, is beautiful and also really important, because when we are thinking about stories, we capture our reality as it appears to us. But that the same sequence of events, or even the same classroom experience all year long, happens differently for different people, depending on a lot of other circumstances, things that happened before they even came into the classroom. So the Reluctant Storyteller is going to basically tell you the story of a Cherokee young man who's experiencing reluctance in wanting to be a storyteller. And I don't want to ruin the story for you, but I can tell you that there's more than one way to tell a story, and that's really delved into. And it's just a gorgeous novel. So definitely bring that one in if you want to do something intergenerational, if you want to talk about Native American storytelling traditions, and if you want to talk about the nature of story as a kind of a container for human experience, but that there's also many different ways to tell a story. That's the best I can do there. Operation Sisterhood, so beautiful, and also super cute when it comes to just thinking about the nature of like girl groups or guy groups or non-binary groups, groups of friends that come together based on different commonalities that they share. In this particular one, they all happen to be female, but I can tell you that, one of the most important things about my group of friends is that we have been through so many different experiences together, such as I have a group of girls that I went to high school with, and we have a WhatsApp chat. And on that chat, people have had babies, they've gotten engaged, they've gotten married. And so Operation Sisterhood is going to take you through a series of events, but it's also going to bring in the family. The parents are not absent, or the caregivers are not absent in Operation Sisterhood. So I think it's a good one for talking about the role of family, and then also how your friends can be your family. That's what I can say about that one. And then Yes, We Will is Asian Americans Who Shaped This Country. And I always like to throw in a nonfiction text as well, just for those who need reminding that nonfiction needs to be given some love too. This one has such gorgeous illustrations. And then I also like that it's got Asian Americans that folks don't always talk about. So it's not only just the same, 5 to 10 people that everyone knows about, but it's got a lot of people in it that are not as well known, and from countries that are not just Korea, Japan, China, but lots of others as well.
And the illustrators that contributed to that are all Asian artists as well.
And you can see their names in the bottom there. Yes. So then you can check out more works by them. So that leads you to other works, as JoEllen was mentioning. And then this is the YA or secondary slide that just this has got a lot. I got a lot of love for the titles on this page, and I know that we are running out of time. I feel like I took
No,
10
we're
minutes.
not running out of time. We're good. We're good. We're
Okay,
really good.
okay,
Yeah, I just texted you to tell you that because I misread the thing, and we're good. We're
we're
good.
good. Okay,
I'm
how
looking
much
forward to
time?
taking my notes now because you're the YA expert. I'm like, I can't wait. Go for it.
How much time do I have? Because I want to make. I
Yeah,
could talk forever about these.
we no, we technically we've only been recording for 38 minutes,
Okay,
so we're
okay,
good. We're good.
okay. All right. So then I will just take my time with
Yeah.
these. I want to tell you, Anton Chur is one of my very favorite authors, and I think he's also a really cool person. Got to meet him in person in North Dakota when I went to the North Dakota Librarians Association conference. It was amazing. And he was talking about his book, Everything You Want to Know About Indians, but Were Afraid to Ask. There is a young readers edition. This is again nonfiction. Highly recommend bringing this one into the classroom, especially if your unit has to start with informational text. Everybody's got a point where they've got to talk about informational text. This is an informational text. Okay, it doesn't just have to be Letter from Birmingham Jail. As beautiful as that is, you can bring in a book like this, and it has some really modern connections that can teach young people about native populations of folks who have been the first people who were around in our lands before we were. And when I say we, settler colonialist folks. I consider myself and my descendants to be part of that group. Okay, Home is Not a Country. Gorgeous book, novel in verse, pairs really well with a book that is not on here called Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. It's actually, I would say, if you were creating a vertical book stack and you were trying to talk about the theme of belonging and community and just intergenerational magic and conversations that happen when you've got parents that are connecting to the land and people and cultures in one way, and then you as their child or grandchild are connecting to it very differently, and your language is an aspect of that too. This is the book for you. Gorgeous book. I absolutely think it should be taught in secondary classes and brought into libraries. It can be absolutely a community read for sure. That would be a great one for a one book, one school. Home is Not a Country as well. Then Revolution in Our Time, the Black Panther Party's Promise to the People is powerful and beautiful. And I think you should know it's a National Book Award finalist, but you should also know if you've got people on your campus who are getting free and reduced lunch, they may or may not know that that's an aspect of work that the Black Panthers put in place. So the only reason that you are getting free and reduced lunch is because of the work of the Black Panthers. And, you know, one thing I can tell you too that a lot of folks may or may not know is that our beloved Dr. Sonia Cherry Paul, who is keynoting this very event that you are participating in, wrote an educator guide for this book, and it's available, I believe, on her website. Meet Moth by Ember McBride is also a gorgeous book. It is sad at times, but it's also like it takes you down here and then lifts you back up. So you're going to go, I think young people will like it because they don't know what's coming next. You're going to go on an emotional roller coaster. It's a little bit of a supernatural ghost story, but it's also a little bit of a story of just becoming and just one person coming into themselves. So you, as you read it, you should be prepared to be surprised. And I don't want to ruin anything for you. I don't think I did, but I will say it's better upon the second reading. And I've heard that the audiobook is amazing. The Legend of Auntie Poe. I have so many copies of this in my classroom. It is so great. And I also think that it's going to be engaging for young people in a similar fashion to Mouse and American Born Chinese. So if you are still doing Persepolis, American Born Chinese, Mouse, you should put The Legend of Auntie Poe in that category and consider reading it, not only because it's an adventure story, it's a traditional classic story, but also because it's one that will, I think young people will relate to these days because they like so much manga and anime. And I think it's got all of the elements. It's got the young person kind of coming into themselves. It's got intergenerational storytelling a little bit. It's got magical creatures a little bit. So I think that it's going to have a lot of components that are going to feel familiar for our people who love manga and anime. And then The Lost Dreamer, I would actually put side by side with The Last Cuentista, only because one takes place so long ago, and one is more contemporary, but they're both dealing with that idea of dreaming and creating and storytelling. And so, what happens in the dream space? How do we create? But then also, are we able to kind of invent the world that we want to see, when we allow ourselves to rest and to dream? I don't know if that's the best way to say that. I'm thinking immediately of Aboriginal dream time and just the dream space as a space for creativity. The Last Cuentista does not deal really with that, but The Lost Dreamer is a story of indigeneity, but then also colonization, and then also what's it like to maintain or hold on to tradition in spite of what colonization did to many indigenous people, which it's ongoing genocide. And so anyway, how can this bring communities together? We can talk about the dream space as a space of creation. So The Lost Dreamer, dream space as a space of creation. The Legend of Auntie Poe, connecting around visual storytelling and connecting with people who love manga and anime, and also bringing in a traditional or older story into contemporary times. Intergenerational storytelling, I think, is a thematic component of the Legend of Auntie Poe. And then Memoth, I think that one is great for connecting around just communities that have experienced trauma, but then also it has some cultural components of indigeneity. It deals with mental health issues, grief and loss, all of that. Revolution in Our Time deals with a very modern day struggle for liberation that the Black Panthers put in place, and some of the modern ramifications of their struggle and their work. And then Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask has it has a lot of great conversation pieces for young people who are wanting to know more about what it means to be Indian or Native American today. And then also for those who are wanting to explore nonfiction texts. And then Home is Not a Country, I think, would be a great whole school read to bring people together around that aspect of intergenerational and also cross-country migration and experiences. Hopefully I explained that in ways that make sense.
You always, always, always do such an amazing job. And my list has just grown and grown and grown. And I love the tips that you offered to some of our participants as well, thinking about, one book, one school, also thinking about ways to add or to replace traditional titles that are in a curriculum. And I think that's so important. And I think when we're viewing, any book, to think through the lens of how we can do better. If you go back to the way that we started, we're always looking to grow, and books help us do that. And we don't always grow if we're not changing what we're using. So I think
and keep it moving forward, right? Keep it evolving. Over 3,000 children's books are published every year. So we should continue to add to our lists for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And share and learn from other reading advisors. Julia and myself attending conferences all the time, going to the public library, tapping into different workshops to inform and educate ourselves about what's out there, and just pedagogy and practice. And like yourselves, being involved in days here at the Educator Collaborative, I think all of these things are tips and steps in being able to grow as a community of learners. So I'm excited about that as well.
So we've got a quote from Dina Simmons to tie everything together. She says it's important to value people's unique identities as assets to a full fabric of a beautiful mosaic of difference, diversity, belonging, and humanity. And one of the things I hope that you've taken away from this session is that our identities are not just our linguistic, our cultural, our racial, our ethnic identities, but they're also the experiences we have that make us human. So I think that it's important to remember how much our young people are changed or have been shaped by everything that they've experienced over the last couple of years, adults too, and then to come together in community around those things. Okay, we have a few questions for you to consider with your colleagues. The first is, how will you create experiences to extend learning beyond the classroom? So we're thinking about experiential learning. We're also thinking about connecting with elders or folks in the community who might share cultural norms or values. And we're also thinking about how can we expand the walls of the school building so that learning is happening outside and inside. How will you lean into discussing texts that represent all lived realities? As we mentioned before, those lived realities are not just an aspect of your racial, cultural, ethnic, or linguistic identity, but they are also an aspect of your lived experiences. So how will you lean into discussing texts that represent all lived realities, especially those that are different from yours or different from those you are familiar with? What does reading and learning look like in your community? I think it's important to consider, are you in a community that values reading and literacy, and how will you know? And then who or what has informed your practice in pedagogy? We're always looking to grow. And if we are doing that in a way that reflects the changing times, then we need to also change the people that we grow and learn from. So if you're always listening to or learning from the same 20 people, it's probably a good idea to look beyond that.
Yeah. And we're so happy that you spent the time learning from us and with us. And we wanted to thank you for that. We also wanted to give you some resources because we believe in always learning and always growing together. And so this should just be the beginning or the extension of conversations you perhaps are already having or maybe having in your classroom. And hopefully you're using books, as we've suggested, to help honor the lives of your students and to invite the in and outside community in to grow with you. So please share with us the tips, the titles, the things that you are doing and that you are learning, and so that we can learn from you. And thank you so much. Please stay connected, and we hope to see you at another event soon.
Yes, we do. Make sure you hit that book ambassador button on the Ed Collab website if you would like to meet with one or either or both of us, and keep in touch. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time today.
Yes. Videos not stopped.
Still recording.
Stop recording.